Welcome to my channel. This video contains several scary stories. Please watch it to the end. There are time codes at the bottom if you want to switch the story. Also, I am grateful for your support and advice. Thank you. Let's get started. One cold winter evening, a certain 16-year-old girl was home alone watching TV. Her parents had gone on a holiday to a friend's house. It had been snowing thickly all day, but the girl felt nice and cozy sitting on the sofa in the living room, wrapped up in a warm wool blanket. By midnight, her parents still hadn't returned, and she was starting to feel anxious. She didn't want to call them, lest they think she couldn't take care of herself. The TV was in the corner of the room next to the big window. She was watching another movie when suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed something moving in the window. In the darkness, amid the falling snow, she recognized the figure of a man walking toward her. As he got closer, she could make out his face. It was covered with scars, and his lips were stretched in a sinister smile. Startled, the girl froze, not daring to move. The man stood like that and looked at her silently through the glass. Then he suddenly put his hand into his coat pocket and pulled out something. It was a knife. She grabbed the phone from the table by the couch, dialed the police number, and held her breath, waiting for an answer. "There's a man standing outside my window," she whispered, keeping her gaze fixed on the creepy visitor. "He has a knife. Please come quickly. My address is..." She sat motionless, the minutes passing one after another. The man outside the window was still standing there, staring straight at her. Finally, she heard sirens outside, and the police started knocking on the door. The girl rushed to the front door, letting the police officers in. They told her they had seen no one near the house and had found no sign of anyone. "It can't be," the girl said, pointing to the window. "He was just standing there when you knocked. You couldn't have missed him." "That's impossible," said the officer. There was no one there, and the snow was untouched. In this snow, even if someone had been there recently, they would have left clear footprints. "But I saw him with my own eyes," insisted the girl. "You know, your eyes can play tricks on you," the officer grinned. "Maybe you watch too many movies." The policemen were about to leave when suddenly, one of the officers noticed something wrong. He frowned and walked around the couch where the girl was sitting. There were wet footprints and a dropped knife on the carpet behind the couch. "You weren't seeing a man outside the window," the officer said. "You were looking at his reflection. The whole time he was standing 2 feet behind you." "I like to get out into nature, away from all the city bustle, dirty air, and human misunderstanding. I was lucky because I have a house in a village, which is located right in the middle of the forest. How I love to go there on weekends. Why did you love it? I'll tell you why. After a hard week at work, I decided to go out of town as usual. I picked up some groceries, threw them in the trunk, and set off. I arrived in the evening, got tired on the road, and immediately went to bed. I fell asleep quickly and soundly. I was awakened by the noise of car alarm. Well, I thought, maybe some animal ran by. I looked out the window, made sure that there were no thieves, and cut out this terrible noise. I lay down again and just started to fall asleep as the alarm system started working again. Without getting up, I pressed the button and everything went quiet. But 5 minutes later, the alarm went off again. All right, 1 time, okay, 2 times, but more than that. You start thinking bad thoughts. Chickening out a bit, I still got up, turned it off again, but didn't lie down, and started watching through the curtain to see who decided to play around like that in the middle of the night. I was watching. And then I see, behind the light of the lantern in the bushes began to appear someone's shadow. And the shadow was approaching the car, showing its shape. Something skinny, in black clothes, about 2 meters tall, with long, thin arms came leisurely to the car, tapped on the wheel, and went back into the bushes. At that moment, I realized that it was time to start being afraid. Shaking with fear, I turned off the alarm and continued watching. Something came out of the bushes, approached the gate, threw an arm over it, and removed the partition holding the gate closed. I was gripped with fear. Who is it? What does it want from me? Why won't it leave? I couldn't move. goosebumps ran from my head to my heels and back, sending a large shiver through my body. My mouth was dry, and my thoughts began to paint scary pictures in a panic. Gritting my teeth and clenching my hands into fists, I came to my senses and ran up the stairs to the first floor as fast as I could. Just as my hand reached for the light switch to find something to protect myself from the guest, I froze. I froze because it was staring out the window. With its hands against the glass, it was looking out to see if anyone was home or not. That's when I realized that all this car trickery was to lure the victim outside. Why? I didn't want to know, and I don't want to know. But the fact is the fact. It's here, and it's looking for me. His breath was fogging up the window, and I was glad I did, because I couldn't take my eyes off his face. Skin the color of ash, covered in wrinkles. Deep, small black eyes, beady. Instead of a nose, there were 2 holes. His breathing was so heavy and hoarse that it made my lungs cramp. There were no lips, only 2 rows of sharp yellow teeth. I could not be seen, for I was in the back of the house. But it wasn't just going to leave. After standing at the window, it went to the door. A knock, and then another. In the gap under the door, I saw it trying to get its fingers under the door. The knob started jerking up and down frantically. And the sounds. It wasn't like a human voice. It was an animal growl. You know when you start taking a bone away from a dog and it growls in anger? Something like that, only angrier and more detailed this creature was making. I knew that if it heard me, it wouldn't leave me alone and would find a way into the house. So I just lay there on the stairs and waited for it to end. Tears ran down my face involuntarily, no matter how hard I held them back. My temples started tapping, so much so that it felt like my soul was shaking. I blacked out. When I woke up, I immediately looked at the door. The door was still there. I had never been so happy. I got up from the stairs and looked out the window. It was already daytime outside the window, and the sun was quite high in the sky. Without thinking, I went upstairs, grabbed my keys, and without packing, went to my car. As I walked out the doorstep, I saw his footprints on the ground, proof that I wasn't crazy. The broken-off handle, the scratches on the door, and the boards from the gate that were lying in the middle of the road also proved it. Jumping into the car, I drove away from that village. On the way, turning on the radio, I heard that the bodies of 2 girls had been found in the neighborhood of this village in the morning. The corpses had been mutilated and dumped in the swamp. It had found what it was looking for after all. In the bedroom of a girl there was a closet, inside of which there was a large mirror. This girl was a fan of tickling her nerves, and therefore sometimes opened this closet at night and looked at her reflection. One day when she was bored, she did it again. She was surprised by an interesting effect this time. Thanks to the play of light and shadow, this time she was reflected in the mirror, as if with empty eye sockets and a huge mouth. The reflection looked very realistic and almost 3-dimensional. After admiring this sight for a minute, the girl went to the bathroom, but on the way she remembered something, and it made her turn on the bathroom light, lock herself in there, and wake up her parents and half of the neighbors with her scream. It was that the mirror had been removed from the closet the day before. My sister Maria was 1 year older than me. We went to the same boarding school. Every weekend we were allowed to go home and visit our mother. One Sunday evening, my sister and I went shopping in the city. When we were going home, we caught the bus. Maria found a leather wallet lying on the floor beneath our seat. The wallet was pretty old and it looked like it was worn out. There was $20 inside. I told her we should split the money, but my sister refused. She was always such an honest person. She said we should return the wallet to its rightful owner. When we got home, the house was empty. There was a note on the kitchen table from our mother telling us to behave ourselves while she was away. She had gone on a 2-week holiday with her new boyfriend. Maria opened the leather wallet and started going through the contents. There was a bank card with no name on it, a bus ticket, an old black and white photo of a man and a folded piece of paper. She took out the paper and looked at it. What does it say? I asked. I don't know, replied Maria. I think it's in Latin. I grabbed the note and began reading. Morit fem te saltams, est dextrem svarit. Ave versus Christus, verum de trevi, vermi est reflexum, arum dri tripum, dextru milentinum, ave satani. No, silly, my sister laughed. You're pronouncing it all wrong. Don't you know anything? When the Romans were writing down Latin, they used a V instead of a U. Those V's are pronounced like U. Okay, if you're so smart, then you read it, I replied. Maria snatched the piece of paper from my hands and read it aloud. What does it mean? I asked. I have no idea, she replied. We studied Latin in school, but I don't recognize any of the words. She tucked the paper back into the leather wallet and left it on her bedside table, telling me she would hand it in to the police station next week. During the night, as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard Maria suddenly jump out of bed and run into the bathroom. She was retching and vomiting into the toilet. Shocked, I climbed out of bed and went to see if she was all right. I found her bent over the toilet bowl, supporting herself with one hand. She was crying. What happened? I asked. Maria, what's wrong with you? She didn't answer and just waved me away. The next morning, Maria had a fever. She said she felt dizzy and couldn't go to school. She wanted me to go alone and tell the teachers she was sick and would come to school tomorrow. I spent the rest of the week at boarding school, but Maria never showed up. I kept sending her text messages, asking where she was, but she never replied. The next weekend, when I went home, I found the house in darkness. There was a horrible stench in the air. It smelled like rotting flesh. Maria, Maria, I called. Where are you? It stinks in here. When I went upstairs, my sister suddenly appeared from the bathroom. Maria, what's that stink? I asked, wrinkling up my nose. It smells like a decomposing rat. She nodded her head. It's coming from the neighbor's house, she said. Their dog died. It got hit by a car. After it got run over, it still managed to get inside its doghouse and died there. Why didn't they bury it? I asked. The neighbor is on holiday. It's been days and he hasn't returned yet. The gate is locked and nobody can get in. Really, the gate is locked? But how did the dog get back inside? Beats me. Well, let's keep the windows shut so the stench won't get inside, I said. It's enough to make you vomit. Maria went around the house, closing all the windows. A little while later, I made dinner and called my sister. She said she didn't want anything to eat because she had lost her appetite. I ate alone. That night, as I lay in bed, I could still smell the neighbor's dead dog. The stench was overpowering. I got up and sprayed the room with a can of air freshener. The next day, the smell was still there. I went out for a walk just to get away from the terrible stench. Maria stayed in her room all day. She said she had to catch up on her schoolwork. On Sunday evening, I was packing my clothes and preparing to go back to boarding school. I didn't see Maria packing anything. Aren't you coming with me? I asked. No, I still haven't fully recovered, she replied. My school uniform is still dirty as well. I'll do the laundry later. I went back to school, but all week, I heard nothing from my sister. I texted her until I ran out of credit, but she never answered. One morning, I woke up to find a text message on my phone. It was from my mother. When I opened it, I couldn't believe what I was reading. Come home immediately. Your sister is dead. Mom. The phone fell from my trembling hands, and I felt so dizzy, I had to sit down. It seemed like I was in a terrible nightmare. I kept expecting to wake up and find out that she was still alive. Sadly, that was not to be. I packed a change of clothes and went home straight away. When I got to the house, I saw that our gate was open and there were several people gathered around. My mom was standing in the driveway, crying and holding a piece of paper in her hands. Mom, what happened? I asked, bursting into tears. My mother embraced me and held me tight. Maria died. She's been dead for 13 days. I found her under the bed. Her body was rotting. The smell was unbearable. Where were you? Why didn't you find her? I was shaking. A chill went down my spine. Who was it that was with me the last time I went home? Who was it that slept in the bed beside me? I looked over and saw our neighbor standing in his yard. His dog was sitting at his feet. The same dog Maria had said was dead and causing such a stink. Nobody knows what happened to my sister. It's still a huge mystery. I suspected it had something to do with the note she had read in Latin. I tired to find a translation online. According to my research, this is what the words mean. Morit viem means death. Salvetiam vies means to salute or give honor. Trevi means life. Ave versives Christi vies means hail the Antichrist. Reflexvum means reflection. Dextravimi lenten viem means there will be a wake after 13 days. Ave satani means hail Satan. In other words, it's a satanic incantation, a black magic spell. According to what I've read, it is used by people who want to die. They recite the spell to make a pact with Satan, to offer their souls up to the devil. After reading the incantation, they slowly waste away and die. Within 13 days, you will see the person who spoke the words, but in truth, they will only be a reflection of their former selves. A ghost. Then, after 13 days, their dead body will resurface. There is one thing that still baffles me. I read the note too. Why didn't it affect me? Why didn't I suffer the same fate as my beloved sister? Could it have been the way I read it? Perhaps my ignorance of the Latin language saved my life. But wait a minute. When you were reading this, did you read the Latin words? Did you read it wrong like I did? I hope so. I hope you didn't read it correctly. Did you?